All right, welcome to our Interspiritual Luminaries. We are so excited to have Alejandra Warden with us today. And I wanted to start out with a bio so you get a sense for who Alejandra is, and then an initial question, and we'll just kind of see how the conversation goes. If you're here live, you're welcome to write questions in chat, and we will see which ones we can get to depending on kind of time and energy and all that. And thanks everybody for coming, for being in this space with us. And Alejandra, welcome. Bienvenida.
Thank you so much.
So Alejandra is an educator, counselor, international speaker, spiritual guide, and author dedicated to cultivating a deep consciousness of oneness. Rooted in the wisdom of the Sacred Feminine and Sufism, her teachings also integrate her Catholic upbringing in Argentina, offering a natural, interspiritual approach to transformation. I'm intrigued by that language. Alejandra specializes in meditative and contemplative practices, as well as the interpretation of dreams and spiritual experiences. She serves as an interspiritual mentor and trainer for the Spiritual Paths Institute, and is the Director of Charis Circles of Interspiritual Practice for the Charis Foundation for New Monasticism and Interspirituality. Remembrance, a vision of the Sacred Feminine and the Renewal of the Earth, and El Llamado de mi Corazon are two of her published works. She lives in Washington State with her family. Lots there to explore. And I wanted to start with, you had talked about that Catholic upbringing. Mm-hmm. And so I wondered if you could talk a bit about, or maybe start here, your way to or toward interspirituality. What did that look like? What was that journey?
Well, I always say that interspirituality in a certain way found me more than I found or sought interspirituality. As you said, I was born in Argentina. All my background is Catholic. I started when I was 3 years old at school, in Catholic schools, and I ended college in Catholic universities. So basically, all my background is originally Catholic. Um, One of the reasons that I became interested in dreams, and is one of my specialties, is because interspirituality for me started almost through a dream in which I felt called to understand the interrelationship and unity of reality of the world. And because I was so involved with Catholic teachings, the Bible teachings, I said, well, I want to see how other sacred books relate or not. So I started to seek unity or that interrelationship in religion, because that was what I was doing as a 14-year-old. And that led me into this world of spiritual traditions in which I started finding all sorts of connections. And that became also a way of starting to look at life, because it was not just religion. It was starting to look at people in what we have in common rather than what make us different, into simple things as in foods. How do we relate? How do we communicate? How is your tradition similar to mine? Not just what it makes us separate and different. But I didn't know at the time. I'm almost 67 at this point. So obviously at that time, I didn't know anything about the word interspirituality, or that existed anything like that. Officially, then, I learned about interspirituality much later when I came to the United States, but not while I lived in Argentina. So after 14, basically, I started reading these sacred books from other traditions. Eventually, because I was interested in dreams and spiritual experiences, my journey really took me more from a contemplative area field or more mystical. And so I end up meeting people within the Sufi tradition. And I started studying Rumi and Attar and other luminaries in Sufism that were all kind of also having a kind of interspiritual dimension to the world. But again, I didn't know the word interspiritual, but for me it was a level of interconnectedness, a connectedness, not just mind, heart, and body and action, but actually also in ways of understanding that we were all kind of coming from of one core. And that for me was super important because in my religious Catholic education, I come from the time in which God was in the sky, was not an old guy with a beard, was not that much, but it was something far away. It was something that was almost seeking to see whether I did a bad thing or I had a bad thought or a bad feeling. Um, so it was not the kind of communication that I have now with the divine, which for me, interspirituality, one of the beauties is that it brought the divine to this plane in everything and in everyone. And and I can see the sparks distributed and spread all over the cosmos. So for me, Sufism was the one that brought me into that deeper level of communion, not just with me and the divine, but with me and the divine being everything. And then I had a kind of very strong experience with the divine feminine, a kind of visionary training. And out of that, it's when everything became kind of united finally, because the divine feminine for me, what it showed was how life, the divine is interweaved with absolutely everything in life. So that's how my life became kind of interspiritual. When I recognized the word, I said, oh, that is what it is. So it was not something that I sought, but rather something that I suddenly realized, oh, there is a word. I didn't even know there was a word.
I appreciate that so much, Alejandra, and have had similar experiences both personally in terms of, oh, there's a word for this, and also just talking to people and the kind of the like illumination. You can almost see the aha or like the light bulb. Oh wow, this is a thing. What does this mean? What is this? Are there communities?
Mm-hmm.
And one of these communities that you and I have in common is the interspiritual meditation community from Spiritual Paths. And one thing I didn't mention after reading your bio was that Alejandro was one of my teachers in the interspiritual meditation, and then became one of my mentors as I was pursuing the facilitator and the mentor training there. And we have this other unique thing in common that was a really delight, and that is there's a new book out that is really commemorating 25 plus years of this term interspirituality that originated with Brother Wayne Teasdale. And there's a couple volumes, ultimately there'll be 3. Alejandra and I have chapters in it side by side. And there are like 120 total authors, right, in these volumes, Interspirituality, the Heritage, and Interspirituality, the Future. And when I opened up to my chapter to see, oh, I had forgotten what I wrote about. Oh yeah, this is what I wrote about. It's been a few years in the making. And then I see you next to me. And in your chapter, I just want to show Interspirituality, the Future. You write, the return of sacred feminine and interspirituality. And one of the things, you quote Teasdale here, and I love this quote. You say, we are at the dawn of a new consciousness, a radically fresh approach to our life as the human family in a fragile world. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that stood out to me in that was your inclusion of this about human family. And I understand that, there are going to be family members that are harder than others. And I wonder about our interspiritual vision for family. And I think you were touching on that a little bit earlier as part of your story and how interspirituality found you. So maybe I don't really have a question, just as to say I've been thinking about that and pondering that.
I think that family is super important on many levels. One is on learning how to love, learning how to. Families are so close that they are the biggest challenges in a certain way, because the mirror is so close that sometimes we are able to understand another person, but we are having a hard time understanding or relating to a brother or a sister. I was very lucky in a sense that I loved my family and my family loved me. So I did not have a lot of the issues. As a matter of fact, my brother is my best friend. So I didn't have the kind of issues that I know are very difficult for some people. But working, I used to run a school, as you know. Working at school, those students for me were like my children in many ways. They were an extension, a very close extension of my family. And they were like angels to me. That's how I saw them. So when they suffer, when they had a problem with their parents, I used to have a student that arrived in my school when he was 2 years old, and he behaved like a dog because being a dog was the only way he got attention from the family. The dog got more attention than him. So he said, if this dog gets more attention, this is the way I'm going to behave. So for 2 years, he would have a snack in 4 legs and from a bowl. When he finished high school, he was, of course, a completely different person. But for me, Tano, that was his name, it was part of my soul. I don't know how to explain it. So his pain in his role in his family, it was something that it was part of me. So all my effort was to build a bridge so that he could find that bridge, so that he could walk through it. So I do know how difficult it is, even though it wasn't that for me on a particular level. I know how difficult it is when in a family things like that happened. And that is a big thing that happened. But there are smaller things, and there are also much larger things. Sometimes when you're a parent, you don't know what is going to happen to your child. As a mother myself, I ended up homeschooling because my kids after third grade didn't want to go to school anymore. They are twins. But I saw how difficult it is. When they went to college, some part of me was kind of trembling in many ways because they didn't know so many things. They were too innocent in a certain way. Then I know other families in which, for example, adopted children. I have many friends with adopted children. And those children, they have their own karma, their whole destiny, and suddenly they come into a new nest. Adaptation, how the unconscious works, how you build these relationships. It's very sacred, but it's also very difficult sometimes. So I think that is actually what we are meant to do. We are meant to create families. We are meant to create communities. And we are meant to learn how to relate to those communities and what is our function in those communities as builders. I think that interspirituality, for me, is the natural builder of communities, because we are naturally learning how everyone else, what we have in common, what we can share, and also how to discuss difficult topics, how to grow together. For me, it's the essence of the beloved community is that possibility in my eyes that interspirituality brings. And as an educator, for me, it was also the same, even though, again, at that time, I didn't know the word interspirituality. Maria Montessori, which was the kind of technique, and also Rudolf Steiner, who was my main sources, they both consider life as being interrelated, of having to build a better community, a better world through our own hands. And that means looking in the mirror, but not like the other, but actually looking in the mirror to see what we do, how we act, not what the other is doing. So I think that interspirituality is a great tool and source. I find it a bridge builder.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I found my cheeks were starting to get sore. I was smiling so much. We, as you probably know, we titled today Interspirituality in Everyday Life.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we consider this notion, I can't wait to hear what this looks like for you or how you think about this. And in fact, I'd even be curious to hear how you think about the differences between spirituality in everyday life and interspirituality in everyday life. But really honing in on this notion of everyday life, right? This invitation to consider the ordinary aspects of our lives and to integrate the extraordinary with the ordinary. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and your experiences on this subject. What does it look like for you?
For me, interspirituality is everyday life, in the sense that it weaves everything. Spirituality, normally when we talk about spirituality, is the search for meaning, is finding a purpose, finding the source of something, being in nature, being the universe, being the beloved, the divine, or a name of God, whichever name it's from your tradition. But I think that probably the difference would be that spirituality can focus on to one tradition, into one way, and then you may or may not be interested in finding about others, which means that you might remain within your particular community, which is really good. I don't want to say that it's not good, but it's somewhat limited. For me, interspirituality is less limited because it allows me to learn from everything, to connect with everything, and to look for the sacred in absolutely everything. For me, the divine, it's everywhere and in everything. And everyday life is the nest where the divine expresses itself all the time. So for me, if I would have to clean or cook or tend for my cat or my home, is doing the job that the divine is asking me to do in a certain way. Life is asking me to do. If you don't want to call it the divine, life is asking me to do. So my job is to see the sacred in that. And I think that one of the issues that sometimes we face is that because we are so separate, the divine is one thing and we are seem to apparently another, we cannot do our job. because our job is to experience the divine, to experience the spirit of life that is breathing through everything, that is breathing me, because I cannot be alive without being breath in a certain way, being breathed. So then it's honoring and just simply accepting what is my daily life, what is my meaning. And my meaning on a personal level, it's seeing the sacred in everything, experiencing the sacred of everything. And sometimes it's difficult because sometimes one forgets. Sometimes for me, cleaning is a great practice, an everyday practice, because it's so easy to start putting things in order mechanically, but each thing is actually was done for a purpose. Somebody did that. And even if that somebody did it also mechanically, it is my job to remember what is the source of that. So for me, interspirituality, as I said, is a way to being curious, to relate, and to look for meaning in pretty much everything, even in some things that are so difficult to understand. For example, the pain that sometimes we cause to others, or how we mistreat each other, or how we destroy, how we trash. There are so many things that are so difficult for me. But then I have to remember that sometimes we don't remember. And then we do things that if we remember, we wouldn't do. So my job, my personal job, I see it as having to remember for myself and for those who can't or don't. And as I said, sometimes it's extremely difficult. I don't know if I'm answering what you expected,
No, it
but
is so
that is.
good. There's this sense of returning, right? If things become mechanical, which is such a great way to put it, it becomes ordinary.
Mm.
um, what does that look like for you to return back to this? The divine is in everything. It is here. It is in the exact moment.
As I said, for me, is remembrance. It's to remember why I'm here, to remember why my soul chose to be here at this time. I think our souls chose to be here at this time. I think that everyone that is here, it's needed at this time. So it's not an ego trip to say, I need to do my job. It's more like a surrender, because it's so much easier right now to close my eyes and to pretend that because everything is okay at home, everything is okay everywhere. It's very easy. It's as easy to see, because we are forced, almost with the internet, for example, we are now forced to see the pain of the world. We are forced to see what we have done over millennia to one another. It's not an easy thing. It's almost in our faces what is happening. The cause and the effect and of our actions, our human actions, are in our face right now, everywhere you open, if you want to see. But that also is causing a lot of fear in a lot of us. So we close our eyes. We don't want to see. We don't want to hear. So we keep on kind of focusing onto my desires, my personal practice, my destiny, my soul destiny. And we forget that it's not for us that we're here. We are always, everything is for everyone. We have an individual experience of that, but we wouldn't have this cosmos if it weren't for everyone. So for me, interspirituality, it helps me with that, because it reminds me that meaning, it's everywhere, and that I'm completely surrounded by what I can call the other. The air is full of microbes everywhere. I cannot get out of everything else. So it's easy. And I think we've been in a state of forgetfulness or self-absorption in a certain way for long enough. And we cannot, at this point, do it. I think the internet and the interconnection that we live today is forcing us to see whether we like it or not. And I think the more we deny that, the more we're going to be forced, because the divine has its own, I don't know, impulse or need. And I think part of interspirituality in everyday life is to respond to that call, to respond to that need of life today, to be seen, and compassion, to feel with the other, to really know and feel with the other, not just in our hearts, but really in a much more proactive way sometimes. That's how it feels.
Thank you, Alejandra. Earlier you said we are coming from one core. And for you who are originally from Argentina, I know that you're still doing some work there. And so my question is a little bit about is about culture and interspirituality. Why is it important to weave in your culture with your interspiritual practice and way of being? Why is it an important part of our interspirituality?
I think it's super important, Jeanette, because culture is a lot of what gives us our meaning. In particular, when we are born in one place, everything around us tells us how reality is. So it's very easy to think that in the same way that I have this religion and it had nothing to do with yours, my culture can also have nothing to do with yours. So to find the common things that cultures have, it's super important. And when we are with another person, to also learn that maybe their language, maybe their way of using their words or their actions that might be odd for us or unusual, or sometimes even offensive, maybe it's nothing to do with that. We tend to get personal in almost everything. And I think culture, it's a major way in which we can weave us together. We don't have to have everybody's culture. But interspirituality, I said before, for me, it's also a sense of curiosity. How does the other understand life? Why do they eat this food and not the other? Why do they love so much spices and I don't eat any spices at all? Tell me, how is it? How is it your morning? How is your prayer? How is your everyday job? How is life for you? I think it's super important. When I came to the United States, my kids were 2 years old and they didn't speak any English. They understood it, but they spoke Spanish. So I continued speaking Spanish to them. And a lot of people got very offended because they thought that I was speaking about them, not about the kids, not to the kids, or that I was saying bad things to the kids about them. I was surprised it had never even crossed my mind, something like that. But I ended up having to start speaking some English, at least when I was with others. And eventually they learned some pretty poorly pronunciated words because I was pronouncing them wrong. So they end up going to school pronouncing words wrong. So I don't know how good it was, but I did understand the insecurity that my being from a different culture and speaking a different language in a tone that they couldn't understand um, was making them feel super insecure. So even though it was an effort for me to start speaking English, because now I speak a little bit better, but in those days, to be honest, it was really difficult. Um, I did it as an effort as well because I could see I didn't want them to feel afraid. So I think that culture is a two-way street in a certain way. It's an effort from the person that receives another culture, and it's an effort for the person that comes from a different culture. Both of us have to come together into how we can make our lives better for both of us. And some things will remain with me. I drink mate, which is our national herb, which is like a coffee for us every day. My daughter drinks it every day. Today, a lot of people drink it, so it's not an odd. But the first time I drank it, my husband was also a Montessori teacher, and he was having a camping trip with his students for a whole weekend to a national park. And I was invited, and I went. And of course, in the morning, we did the fire. And of course, I did prepare my mate there. And the mate has like a gourd and a straw and herbs, like if it were coffee, but it's just herbs, pieces of herbs. So I started drinking it. And by the time the kids are about to wake up, a teacher comes and says, well, I hope you're going to put that drug down so people don't need to see how you are getting high here or something like that. So again, it is important. I do it now. But the first thing I do when I am with people I don't know is to explain what I'm going to do. Because I want to build communication. For me, the bridge of interspirituality is not just a bridge of, oh, people do this and I do that, and how wonderful everyone do different things, or we can incorporate different traditions. It's more about communication. Communication for me is a sacred gift that we were given as human beings. All of nature communicates, but we can communicate with words. And it's super important for me to learn that. Culture for me is part of that. And also when we belong to a culture, eventually, because now everything is so interconnected, we are being forced to learn about cultures from other people, about different foods, about different ways of being, about how people understand life. For example, something that might sound stupid, but I was watching the other day some Korean movie, and everyone was bowing whenever they had to talk to each other. And everyone was talking as a you, which in Spanish is usted, which is it's like when you talk to a person of hierarchy, that's how they were treating each other. And also they were eating enormous amount of little plates that I thought it was fascinating, because usually I have one plate with a whole bunch of food on top. So I was learning, I was telling to my husband, well, I actually like to incorporate some more plates, some different dedication. So there's always time to learn. And I could wonder, or I wonder, how would they feel that we come and hug them, or like a Latino? When I came to the United States, for me, I was kissing everyone. People were, you know, um, I was called by the school teacher because my son was hugging everyone to say hi, and told them not to tell him not to do it. So adaptation is super important. Respect is super important. And one of the culture things and exchanges that for me are super important to interweave our reality, which is actually what reality um, is the respect, is to have this counting to 10 or 5, to give our space before we judge, or before we take on that feeling that maybe it's a feeling of discrimination or separation. My daughter is a doctor and she works with homeless and in the streets. And has become a great teacher for me of culture, interweaving culture, and being able to listen to others, which are living an experience of life so different to mine. So culture, I think, is super important to interweave us.
One of the things that's standing out is you mentioned the effort that it takes for both, for folks of both or multiple cultures. And sometimes when I think about interspirituality as a river, and like we're all in this one river, it's like I'm just floating, and it's like, no, I'm not doing nothing, and just in the kiddie pool, standing here enjoying all the similarities. It's taking effort for me to understand, to see, to hear, to feel with another.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing.
And for me in particular, it's becoming more and more difficult lately in a certain way, because the pain of Latinos, I am Latina, is very close to me. Not just because I work with Latin America, but really Latinos here. A lot of them are afraid or are concerned. And so at this point, I see it as part of my job, literally, to be attentive to them, to call them, to make sure, sometimes to give them some even information, because some of them come from backgrounds of great poverty. And they come here to work hard and to make a better living and more secure place for their children. And I don't want to be political, but because this happened for years into the United States, people coming. As a matter of fact, my husband is American, and I am an American citizen, so are my children. But I came to have a better life for my children here. I said, I want something better. I want my kids to have these possibilities that my husband had. I'm tearing at the moment a little bit. So I understand. Since I came, really, I've been very close to the Latino community because of that. Because I know that for many of them, at least, they come with the same hope that I came, to give something better for my kids, because this is a great country.
In the chapter in Interspirituality, the future, the one that you write about vulnerability. And I just want to say that I appreciate you being vulnerable as well in this space. Seamless is coming to my mind. Like your life, the divine, your spiritual practices, it's seamless. It's like you're helping the Latinx community. You identify as Latina. And it's like, this is the thing. This is my step. This is what I do. And it's just like it's like a natural outpouring.
Yeah, it has become like that.
Do you identify as interspiritual Sufi or as, this is like a small semantics thing, but I'm curious.
Let's see, I'm a Sufi teacher. That is something part of my training. I've been teaching Sufism for now almost 30 years. But I always have done it interspiritually, because even before I knew about the word interspiritual. And the reason for that is because for me, interspiritual embraces Sufism, embraces all traditions. If I say that I'm a Sufi on its own, I am separating myself. I am distinguishing myself. I said, I'm Latino. Yeah, but almost I'm a human being. In the same way, yeah, I'm a Sufi teacher, but I'm a human being. So I identify more as an interspiritual person, or a person following an interspiritual journey, walking an interspiritual journey, more than a Sufi teacher. I do have students of Sufism, but as Nathaniel Yepes, which is one of the founders of the Charis Foundation, he's also a Sufi sheikh, actually, Sufi peer. He says that what I teach is a fragrance of Sufism, because for me it's completely interweaved with with whatever comes, with whatever source comes. For example, in my tradition, I am not Muslim, and I don't expect anybody to be Muslim. I don't expect anybody to have any particular religion or tradition. So I am from a line of Sufism, also in a certain way, that it's more ecumenical. We do not have, we have roots, but things have grown. In my tradition, it went towards India, and in India it became more and more natural interspiritual, because it started including people from the Hindu beliefs, then Catholics, Jewish, and people from all religions at this point. That's how I followed this journey. I was never asked to be anything that I was not. So it was respect the soul. The soul chose a certain culture, parents, traditions, and religions. And so I was not required to do anything about that, but to accept it. But interspirituality, it's a much more proactive way for me. And it serves me deeply, because in the same way that for me, Catholicism right now is completely integrated. Because for me, interspirituality, at least when I found the name, I said, oh, now I can open my arms, finally. Because before I was opening them, but it almost felt like maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. But now it feels to me, oh, I can open my arms. I can actually hold others. it's a permission for me. It gave me permission to not to realize in the sense of becoming aware, but actually to make interconnection a reality. So I consider, if I have to put myself under a label, before saying that I'm a Sufi teacher, I consider myself an interspiritual individual. Hmm.
I just want to say, oh, good. Oh, there's not a question yet, but maybe a comment. But the power of just getting to be together is so present to me at this moment. So I just want to name it, to feel the meaningfulness of all of us gathered here. You talked about the nest. Somehow we are all in this nest together, which has so many beautiful metaphors and possibilities. And that feels true when we get together for prayer and meditation groups.
Of course.
It even, I have to say, I just finished this musical, Come From Away. And there is a scene where it's called prayer. The whole thing is called prayer. So there's a Jewish person, some Hindu people, a Muslim, and two Catholics, all kind of singing their prayers at the same time. And I was playing a Catholic woman. I was not Catholic, so I decided to learn the Hail Mary in order to feel authentic. I didn't have to say it out loud, but I thought, if I'm going to mime this, I want it to be real. I didn't know it so much that when I looked it up, I didn't see the comma. So I read, Jesus, Holy Mary, Mother of God. And I thought, oh, I didn't know it was Jesus, Holy Mary, Mother of God. And then turns out the whole group already knew that. Everybody knew the prayer but me. And they were like, oh, it's actually part of the other sentence. It's just that people pray it so fast. But all of that to say, despite the fact that you can kind of be in this spot where you don't quite know everything about what's going on, presence can be so powerful. So every time we were in that scene, I would feel it so profoundly. So I just want to marvel at the reality of this everywhereness, if only we're aware of it. So thank you for all of that. Maybe I will. Is it okay, Jeanette, if I read what's in the chat? Or
I think that I'm gonna just read this next question, and maybe it'll be the last question.
Okay.
If that's cool. It came to me directly. So we just have a couple of minutes, and I know that you've written extensively, including a book about this. So this is the elevator version. How does the divine feminine weave into your life, Alejandra?
For me, the divine feminine, which for me is it's simply the manifestation aspect of the divine. So I don't see it necessarily as feminine. It's just a cultural name that we need to give it. But really, for me, it's just that quality. It weaved everything. The most important thing that she said, or this teaching said to me, that actually shifted completely my way of looking at life, is she said something that, of course, we all know, but to become conscious for me was very different. That creation is made of love. When we say that God is love, its manifestation is made of love. And love has this quality of bringing things together. So interrelationship, interspirituality for me, it's naturally an expression of that bringing together of love. And when I understood that, to be honest, I couldn't see the world in the way I saw it before. And when I talk about this and when I teach it, it's one of the things that is most difficult to really recognize that beyond everything that looks odd and sometimes awful or difficult, the essence of all that is love. Love that is not recognized, love that is forgotten, love that is misunderstood, love that is taken on a personal level when it actually doesn't belong to anybody. It's just the essence of all from me. So when I understood that from the divine feminine, it's not that I think the divine feminine, it's love, but because it's the expression of the divine in this cosmic cosmos, the cosmos, the energy, all the universe, all existence, then it changed. Because before, for me, I had it was difficult for me. There were certain things that I did not consider them love. And that was a question for me, for the divine feminine. Because she also showed me the horrors of the world, of what we have done. The amount of killing, the amount of discrimination, the amount of hunger, the amount of pain that we cause to others in order to be well. So it was horrifying. And then, oh, but there is an essence, and it's just that we are not conscious. We have forgotten. But that is there. So she helped me remember. She helped me bridge. She helped me to be able to see beyond appearances. Like when you look at to a child, you have these eyes, this wonder, this soul shining through, and then it gets kind of blurred somehow. But if we look close enough, it's still there. When we look at each other's eyes, it's still there. But it's been veiled for a lot of us. So it's one of the most difficult things that she taught me, to change my brain in a certain way. And I see it as one of the most difficult things that are for people to realize. But once that happened, and I think interspirituality is a great, great tool for that, we start seeing that essence, and we start being nurtured by it, and people start receiving from us something different, even if we feel so distant. They can feel that we don't have a bad intent. They can feel that we are trying to build a bridge, that we are trying to communicate. Maybe it's not going to work for everyone or with everyone, but many more than we think. So that's what she taught. That's one of the teachings of the feminine that I think I'm going to carry for the rest of my life. Probably the most important one.
Thanks, Alejandra. I have personally witnessed, experienced that essence of love coming from you.
Thank you.
To me. There are other questions, and I also want to, in the interest of time, I don't want to, but want to respect the schedules. I'm grateful for the folks who are here live. Y'all are amazing. For others who are going to listen to the recording or re-listen so we can remember. Alejandra, I wondered if there's any other final thing you'd like to say to this group. This group is made up of folks who are spiritual companions, interspiritually minded folks, just beautiful humans. Anything that you'd like to end with?
I want to thank you very much for your work, for your function, for whatever you're doing to help others. Because what you're doing for everyone is giving them hope, giving them nurturance, giving them the warmth that sometimes we need when we come for a consultation with another, or when we come in friendship with another. So if there is, I don't have a personal message except my personal gratitude to everything that you are doing. And my hope that you will continue to do it, and that I will also continue to do it, and that our lives are going to be better. The whole world is going to eventually become better. I know in my vision of the future, I see a future that is so much better. So I really thank you for this opportunity, Jeanette and Christina. Thank you very much.
Very welcome. I and we are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors, of other interspiritual people. With that, we'll close out our session for today. Peace, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.